This will be a little different today than it has been. We're going to be reading the Gospel first. And it will be Mark 7, chapters 24 through 37. It can be found in the New Testament of your Pew Bible on page 40. The Syrophoenician Woman's Faith is the title. From there he set out and went away to the region of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know he was there. Yet he could not escape notice. But a woman whose little daughter had unclean spirit immediately heard about him, and she came and bowed down at his feet. Now the woman was a Gentile, of Syrophoenician origin. She begged him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, for it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." But she answered him, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he said to her, "For saying that, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." So she went home, found the child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. The second part, starting with verse 31, Jesus cures a deaf man. Then he returned from the region of Tyre and went by way of Sidon toward the Sea of Galilee in the region of Decapolis. They brought to him a deaf man who had an impediment in his speech, and they begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him aside in private, away from the crowd, to put his fingers into his ears, and he spat and touched his tongue. Then looking up to heaven, he sighed and said to him, "Ephphatha," that is, "be opened." And immediately his ears were opened, his tongue was released, and he spoke plainly. Then Jesus ordered them to tell no one, but the more he ordered them, the more zealously they proclaimed. They were astounded beyond measure, saying, "He has done everything well. He even makes the deaf to hear and the mute to speak." The Old Testament reading is Ecclesiastes 5, verses 18 through 20, and can be found in your Pew Bible on page 583. "This is what I have seen to be good. It is fitting to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun the few days of the life God gives us, for this is our life. Likewise, all to whom God gives wealth and possessions, and whom he enables to enjoy them and to accept their lot and find enjoyment in their toil. This is the gift of God, for they will scarcely brood over the days of their lives, because God keeps them occupied with the joy of their hearts." This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Thank you. So it's Labor Day weekend. You can tell that by the number of people in the pews, among other things. Holiday weekends are busy times for people, and we understand that. But it is a day that we celebrate labor in the U.S., and well, that's what my sermon is on today. I entitled it, "Whistle While You Work." So my first job was working in an orange juice factory, but I got canned. Couldn't concentrate. After that, I tried to be a tailor, but I just wasn't suited for it, mainly because it was a so-so job. And next I tried working in a muffler factory, but that was too exhausting. I managed to get a good job working for a pool maintenance company, but the work was just too draining. And then I worked in the woods as a lumberjack, but I just couldn't hack it, so they gave me the axe. And then I got a job in a workout center, but they said I wasn't fit for the job. And after many years of trying to find steady work, I finally got a job as a historian until I realized there was no future in it. Okay, that's my favorite, I'm saying. I studied a long time to be a doctor, but I didn't have any patience. My best job was being a musician, but eventually I found out I wasn't noteworthy. I became a professional fisherman, but discovered that I couldn't live on my net income. And my last job was working at Starbucks, but I had to quit because it was always the same old grind. And so I retired and found I'm perfect for the job. Years ago, probably 20 plus years ago, I was in a hardware store, and I'm a hardware store junkie. So when I came to the county, I was really disappointed to find there were no hardware stores. Apparently MPG was the last one in the area. There is one up in Van Buren, and so once in a while I just have to get a fix, you know, and go to the hardware store in Van Buren just to say I was there. I was checking out, or I was in line to check out at the hardware store, and there was a man behind me, and he had his hands full of all these little plumbing fittings, and he was really juggling them. He could hardly hang on to all of them. And so I looked and said, go ahead of me so you can put them down on the counter, you know, before they all end up on the floor. And he started talking to me. He said he was 76 years old, which I realize I'm not that far from right now. And he had tears in his eyes. He said to me, I can't hardly work anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do when I can't work anymore. That made a profound impact on me, and it started my journey thinking about work. I had never really given work, vocation, whatever you want to call it, job, a lot of thought. I was blessed enough growing up that my dad went to work every day. He got up every single morning that I ever remember, and he went to work, and he came home every single evening from work. And so work to me was just a way of life. That's what you do. No profound thoughts about it. When I get older, I'll go to work every morning and I'll come home every evening, and that's how life is lived. There's really two streams of thought that I have identified when it comes to work. And the first one goes something like this. We work because we have to. It's how we survive. If you want to be a productive member of society, you have an obligation to work, right? If you want to eat and you want a place to live, you work. So work is something you have to do. And a lot of people are raised with that thought, that work is something that you have to do, and so they do it. There's another way of thinking about work that I think is a little bit healthier, perhaps. And it's this. What if we think about work like it's a privilege to be able to work? This poor guy, he didn't know what he was going to do when he couldn't work anymore. Work was that important to him. It was a privilege to him to be able to work. What if we thought we get to work instead of we have to work? Have you ever thought of that? We get to work. What if you think if work is fun, it's stimulating, it's enjoyable. And this is the big one right here. What if work is a gift from God? Have you ever thought about work being a gift from God? Maybe He knows that we need work. We need it. And He's given it to us as a gift. I used to do a Monday night Bible study at one of my churches, and one of the regular attendees at the church was an optometrist named Tom Mosier. And we were reading a passage in the Bible, and I can't tell you exactly which one, but it led me to say these words, that work is a privilege. It's a gift from God. And he started to bluster and said, "No, that's not right. Work is something you have to do," he said, in order to survive. Well, it was interesting because I didn't argue with him. I did, however, tell him that in the Bible, God talks about work over and over and over. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of passages about work. And they all point to the fact that work is a gift from God. It's something that He gave us because He knows we need it. And so the next Monday night, Tom Mosier showed up, and he looked at me and he said, "You know, you're right." He said, "I went through the Bible this week and I looked up every passage on work, on labor, on toil." He said, every word I could think of that related to work, and all of them identify work as a gift from God. Isn't that something? This is Ecclesiastes 3:12 through 13. "I know that nothing is better for them than to rejoice and to do good in their lives, and also that every person should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is the gift of God." And Ecclesiastes 5:19 and 20. "As for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, and given him power to eat of it, to receive his heritage and rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. For he will not dwell unduly on the days of his life, because God keeps him busy with the joy of his heart." We're privileged to work. We're blessed to be able to work. And when we realize that we're privileged to work and that we're blessed to be able to work, it changes how we work. Particularly if we recognize that our work is for God. And this may be a more familiar passage to you than the ones I've used so far. Colossians 3, verses 23 and 24 says this: "You do not work for other people. Whatever you do in your job, do it with all of your heart, because God gave you this work to do. It is God that you work for in an audience of one." Does that sound familiar? It's this whole idea that all work that we do is work for God. All work that we do and the way that we do it should honor God. So, the basic tenet is this: what is doing it with all your heart, which is what our passage says? What does that really mean, to do it with all your heart? And the first one is be totally honest. I worked in an office one time where the owner of the company left stamps in his secretary's drawer. You know, postage stamps. He would leave a thing of postage stamps in his secretary's drawer. And every evening after the secretary left, he would count the stamps. I caught him doing it one time. I said, "What are you doing?" He says, if you want to know if somebody's honest, he said, just leave the stamps where they can reach them. Because if they're honest, they won't use the stamps for their personal use. He said, if they're not honest in a little thing like that, they're not going to be honest in a big thing. This is a lesson to me. And actually, it's kind of biblical, as it turns out. Although he wasn't a very biblical person, as I recall. Isn't that something? It means that when we do a job, be completely honest. Don't fudge your mileage, with the IRS or your boss. Don't embellish the truth. Don't doctor your time card. And when you make a mistake, own up to it. One of the ways that we do it with all of our heart is to be honest. The second is that we find joy in our labor. Joy is a real difficult word to get a definition to, because we think of joy as fun or something like that, but it's not that, not really at all. I'll try to describe joy as this deep satisfaction. It's not fun necessarily, because there's parts of our jobs that are not fun, right? It's just always going to be that way. But if you do it well, there is this deep satisfaction that comes from knowing you've done a good job. It's one of the reasons I believe God's given us work, is so that we might experience that satisfaction by doing it well. So doing it with all your heart means finding joy in our labor. This is Job 34:11. For he repays man according to his work, and makes man, people, to find a reward according to his way. And Ecclesiastes 2:24. Nothing is better for a person than that he should eat and drink, and that his soul should enjoy good in his labor. Joy. The third thing is, in order to do it with all your heart, is that we do our work well. Proverbs 18:9 says, he who is slothful in his work is a brother to him who is a great destroyer. Believe it or not, that's comparing people who don't do work well to the devil. That's not a very nice comparison, is it? One of the ways that we can think about this is that the more important and powerful the person is that we work for, the more we want to make a good impression. I was watching a program on television one time, and they were restoring a car. This was a custom-built car. Okay, I'm a car restored junkie. I only watch it on TV. I don't actually do it, but I like watching it. So at any rate, they're restoring this custom-built car. It's one of a kind in the world. And the person who originally built it some 40 years ago is going to come see it when they get it finished. Okay? So this famous, now elderly car designer, builder person is going to come see the restored car after they get done with it. And all through the program, they were so meticulous. They were so careful. They followed all the records of the original builder. They wanted so much for the paint to look exactly the way it looked when the original builder built the car. Do you see the kind of thought and detail that goes into something, your work, when your work is being done for the Creator? All work is to be done for the Creator, right? The Creator God. He not only created the work that you're doing, but He created the worker, us. And if we want to honor the Creator, we need to do our work well. The final one is this: serve. If you're doing it with all your heart, it means that you are serving. This is 1 Peter 4:10. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God. of God's grace in its various forms. I had a secretary once. I owned a business for, I don't know, 10, 12 years. A little manufacturing company. And we made x-ray machines for veterinarians and industrial inspection, drug companies for their packaging to make sure that they had packaged things correctly. We even made an x-ray machine for potatoes to find out if they had hollow hearts in them. And if the x-ray machine detected a hollow heart, it would kick it off the line so that it wasn't shipped with the rest of the potatoes. At any rate, I had a secretary who was not very confident. She was incredibly capable, but not very confident. And I realized that part of my job as owner of the company was to encourage her. And so I was constantly making sure that I gave her positive feedback, that what she was doing was good, and that she had exceeded my expectations and all this sort of thing. I recognized what a need there was, and she became brilliant, just brilliant, because I kept telling her she was brilliant. Now, that's the truth. If you want somebody to do a good job, tell them they're doing a good job. Tell them that they're doing something wonderful, and they will rise to what they believe your perception of them is. It's psychology, but I think it's a little bit spiritual too, you know. And for some reason, I recognized that with her, but then I fell down on that with somebody else. I had given a work assignment to somebody in the plant, and we were taking our x-ray machines to a trade show in Chicago. And I needed a platform built to display one of the machines on. And it was just a piece of the platform. It would be added to another platform that I already had, but I didn't tell the worker that. I just gave him a drawing of what I wanted made and asked him to make it. Well, I walked in to pick it up on a Saturday morning or something when nobody was in the plant. And he built what I asked him to build, and then he carpeted it, and then he put this metal stuff edging around it. He was trying to do an extra good job on it, except he didn't know the whole picture. He didn't know that it had to join with another one, and that all the things that he had added to my design were now in the way. It meant I spent an hour undoing all that he had done extra so that I could use the platform the way that I intended to use it. And it made me mad. So here's a guy that's trying to do an extra good job. We didn't communicate well. He blew it. And instead of me telling him, gee, thank you for trying, which would have been a way better response, I got mad because of all the extra work he caused me, and I ripped the edging that he had nailed all around this thing off, and I laid it on his toolbox. Well, I was going to be gone all week, so I didn't see him for a week after that. When I came back in, he's mad, as you might guess, because I had torn apart his project and left the rubbish from it on his toolbox. You think that was encouraging to him? You think it made a good, strong, loyal employee out of him, one that wanted to try extra hard again the next time? No. It tore him down. And I was stupid enough to do it. we have to serve. We're supposed to serve people in our families. We're supposed to serve people on the job. We're supposed to serve our employees. And all of it serves who? God, right? When we do that, we're serving God. With the secretary, I got it right. With the employee in the plant, I got it wrong. Philippians 2, 6 through 8 says this, who being in very nature God did not consider equality with God. Now I'm going to read this slow because I really want you to hear it. This is about Jesus, okay? This is about Christ. This is the description of Christ by the author of Philippians. Who being in very nature God, as Christ is God, did not consider themselves equal with God, something to be used to his own advantage. In other words, his divinity he chose not to use to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing. He did it in lots of ways. Remember washing the feet of his disciples? That's one of the primary examples that we use of servanthood. He made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Jesus didn't have to do that. He didn't have to die for us. But he did in the ultimate act of servanthood. So, if we do it with all our heart, we're going to do it honestly. If we do it with all our heart, we're going to find some joy. If we do it with all our heart, we're going to do the very best job that we can. And if we do it with all our heart, we're going to be servants, humbling ourselves before the people, whether they are people we're leading or whether they are people who are leading us. We're servants. And by the way, great leadership is learning to serve. God bless. And now we get back a little bit of that which has been given